Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name.
Hi, thanks for tuning in to Armor of God again. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. And I hope all of you who are watching this video will learn a lot here and that you will find this video edifying. Anyway, I need to say something here before we start. If you remember the priest that I interviewed before, who's from the Philippines, Father Winston, and there are two things that he shared before that I'd like to provide with examples here. One about the telephone call, and the other one is the frog. I know I sound like I'm not making much sense now, so let me share you the clip of Father Winston first.
As to means, with hexes and spells, puppets, or meat with pins, bones of the dead, blood, toads, chickens, insects, or with cursed objects through gifts, plants, pillows, dolls, ribbons, talismans. With an evil eye, a touch of the hand, an embrace, a breath, with a telephone, whether in silence, a word, a breath, or something else. With a telephone, whether in silence, a word, a breath, or something else. No one is answering, but you can only hear a breath, or sometimes a mumbling.
Just like what I said earlier, I'd like to share a sort of real-life example of what Father Winston shared in the clip just now. So we'll start with the telephone that Father Winston talked about earlier. For this one, let me share this short clip from Father Barton.
I would start getting phone calls. I remember one day when I picked up, I was in my office and my landline rang and I picked it up and then it clicked off. You know, someone was on the line and then hung up. And then about 3 minutes later, my cell phone rang. I picked it up and then it clicked off, right? And then a few minutes later, I was walking past another landline in the ministry office and it rang and I picked it up and there was a pause and then it clicked off again. And again, it's that kind of little thing, right? There's small things. There's small things, but there are ways of trying to frighten the person away from the ministry.
And then, on to the point where Father Winston talked about how people are sending out these curses. One of the ways is by use of the frogs. The audio clip that I'm sharing with you is actually someone performing what they call love spell. And for this one, I'm actually sharing what a Chinese occult practitioner said. He's speaking in Chinese, but I hope the subtitle I've provided for you here will be helpful. And just pointing this out, I'm not encouraging anyone to do what is shared here, simply driving home the points shared by these exorcists.
因為呢個嚟講係講放咗出去，人哋捉唔到嘛，捉唔到嘅問題，因為佢仲細隻啊嘛，係講萬一呢個人非常嘅運氣仲更加唔好，一係放咗出去嘅時候俾一條蛇食咗呢個 frog 嘅問題，呢個田雞嘅問題，呢個人49日入邊啦，佢一定會死嘅，佢絕對唔會生嘅。我哋在做呢個嘅降頭嘅方面本身嚟講，記得一定要揾到呢個蠄蟝仔嘅問題，蠄蟝仔一堆嘅問題，係講冇呢個蠄蟝仔咧，係根本都做唔到嘅，咁嘅意思啦。首先嘅時候咧，見到呢個蠄蟝嘅情況嚟講，我哋咧就要放開呢個蠄蟝先。個吉蓋咧已經喺個水嗰度嚟咗啦，唔知去咗邊一個方向，因為點解我放嘅係6隻。佢哋唔知係邊一隻係正式邊一隻係食咗嗰個人嘅頭咗嘅問題，所以咧佢嘅身就喺呢度嚟，個頭就唔見咗啦，變咗佢去揾都揾唔得到。
I suppose it is a good idea to share how an exorcist would define a curse. This should have been shared in the beginning of this video, but I guess it's better late than never.
A curse or malediction is an illness obtained through the power of the evil one. It is often sent by someone to a victim by reason of hatred, envy, jealousy, or through a spell conjured by an occult practitioner. Very clear. An illness or misfortune obtained through the power of the evil one. It is often sent by someone by reason of hatred, envy, or jealousy through a spell conjured by an occult practitioner.
And someone would sometimes write in the comments, why am I sharing stuff like this? Why don't I share more stuff about Jesus, the angels and saints? Well, we have been sharing about Jesus a lot, as well as the saints and angels. And secondly, just because one does not believe in these curses does not really matter, because the world today is being more open to the practice of the occult witchcraft out there. And as Father Reehil once said before, just because you don't believe it's real or you think it's simply a game does not really matter because the demons take it seriously. And as Christians, we are taught about the existence of angels and demons, and there are popular channels out there that are teaching people how to do these spells and sending curses to people step by step, which is why I'm only sharing you the audio format of that Chinese occult practitioner doing the love spell. And I suppose I cannot really explain the reason why I'm placing too much emphasis on the occult or the dangers of witchcraft here, but it's also probably the same reason why I listened to Father Ripperger's lecture when he explained about the 5 generals of hell. It's for awareness and educational purposes, and what I am learning from those lectures or in interviews or whatever, I share it with the people around me. Anyway, so sorry for taking too much of your time explaining that, even though I don't think I've given a sufficient explanation at all. But in any case, I'd like to share this clip of Father Joseph Iannuzzi as he talks about the devil's attack on genders today.
The soul is considered feminine in many languages, from Hebrew to Greek to the European languages. And God, of course, he's always a male, as portrayed in sacred scripture, the Old Testament, or in the book of Hosea, he says, I, Israel, am your husband. To the New Testament, where Christ in the gospel, when asked why his disciples do not fast, replied, as long as the bridegroom is with them, they cannot fast. So God is always a male, both spiritually and physically in the person of Jesus Christ. With regard to why Christ chose a male nature in which to incarnate himself and not a female, it goes all the way back to the book of Genesis, where the sin of Adam infected the human race with original sin, not the sin of Eve. So since sin came into the world through a man, naturally it had to be cast out through a man. So gender is extremely important in Scripture. And what does Satan want to do in these end times? He wants to not only attack the Scripture, but also the family by denying the definitive distinctions between the feminine and male genders. That's what Satan wants to do. If he attacks this divine categorization of male and female genders, the only 2 genders that exist, then he can destroy marriage, he can destroy the nuptial relationship between Christ, the bridegroom, and we, the members of the church that Christ espouses. In the book of Revelation, there's the wedding feast of the Lamb, Christ, who is the groom. We, the members of his mystical bodies, are the bride. Satan, by denying this male and female binomial categorization, distinction, can easily destroy marriage and Scripture. And that's what he's doing through weak government leaders, throughout the world, who are going along with this satanic agenda of erasing the inalienable genders that we all possess, which are only male and female. From the book of Genesis, God made them male and female, in black and white. And then we find the question in Mark's Gospel, chapter 10, where the Pharisees tried to trip him on purpose because they knew that Herod, who was at the time the king of his region, had divorced his wife and married his brother's wife. So if Jesus was to condemn divorce, he would put himself in trouble with a government leader. And that's why the Pharisees brought this question up. They deliberately tried to set him up. So Christ, being God, knew how to respond, and he did appropriately by recalling the original purpose for which God made man and woman. And that was so that the 2 would become one flesh, and nothing on earth can separate the 2 once that happens. And Matthew's Gospel qualifies it by saying lewd conduct, which some have interpreted as adultery or other things. There were 2 schools at the time of Christ, the Hillel rabbinic thought and the Shammai rabbinic thought. They were not the same. And this is important because not even the Jews were in agreement on the grounds for which a man can apply for divorce. So the school of Shammai interpreted lewd conduct, which is found in Matthew's Gospel. It's also found in Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 1, as being extremely limited to only adultery, whereas the Hebrew rabbinic school of Hillel interpreted in almost the most lax possible way you can. Anything. If a woman cooked a bad plate of spaghetti, you could divorce her. If she talked back to you, you can divorce her. Remember, at the time of Christ, women had 0 state rights. The government gave the woman no rights at all. She was the property of her husband. Imagine living in those times if you're a woman.
And I really like this clip, or rather a reminder from Father Iannuzzi, and I think if anyone listening to this video here has a relative or a friend or a co-worker who's thinking of undergoing so-called gender transition, they really need to listen to this.
Because remember, we're all called to be spouses of God. Our soul is immortal. When our bodies die, they will retain their genders throughout all eternity. They do not change. A man once created is a man for eternity, even in heaven, among the angels. A woman created in God's image is a woman for all eternity, even in heaven. She's physically a woman in heaven, and a man is physically a man in heaven for all eternity in their glorified bodies after the general judgment. We know this, as a matter of fact, from Jesus and Mary. Both of their bodies are in heaven, and they appear to us exactly with the same gender they had when they were on earth. Jesus always appears as a man to every mystic since his resurrection. Mary has always appeared to every mystic as a woman since her assumption. I should have said since Jesus' ascension and Mary's assumption. And the same applies to us. How many apparitions have there been of, I say, Padre Pio as a man from heaven, right? Or even Luis de Gonzaga, or many other saints that appeared, maintaining the same gender they had when they were on earth. In other words, no matter how corrupt a civil law is and denies God's indelible character impressed upon the body and soul of the individual, that bears with it the gender of a male or female only, they cannot change the inevitable fact that when the bodies are all resurrected and go to heaven or hell, they will retain their human, female, and male genders. No civil government law can change that. And those people who try to may be ending up in hell with those bodies, whatever gender they are, and will be stuck with them against their own will for all eternity.
And before we get to the end of this video, I'd like to share this one from Father Daniel Reehil.
Be careful that you're always prayed up, because there's graces that you receive in prayer, not just for you for today, but for all the people that you'll be ministering to, both directly in person and on the phone and through your prayers. You know, we can minister to people through prayer very often. You know, that's how we do it. And your prayer is outside of time and space. I don't know if anybody's ever told you that, but because we're speaking with a divine person, the prayer is outside of time and space. So I'll tell you something I learned years ago. When I see skid marks on the highway that go into that dividing wall, that means somebody had a terrible accident. And I always pray, Lord, send your angels to assist in that accident, because that prayer can go back in time and be applied right before the accident happened to help the people that were in it. Yeah, we can do that because God can do it. You know, we can't do it on our own, but because He can do it, we can pray that way, and it's a wonderful thing.
Well then, that will be all for the video this time. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. And hopefully all of you have learned a lot from this video. Remember that if there's any feedback or suggestion, please let us know in the comments below. We will have a few interviews this month with a number of priests, and one of the subjects that I'm going to focus on will be on the occult as well as Halloween. I'll be sharing updates from time to time on the community post, and if you have any question for these priests, just send us an email with your question. Anyway, if you like our works and you'd like to support us, I left a link to our PayPal donation in the description box below, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your continuous support, contributions, and prayers. And until the next one, thanks again for watching, and may God bless you.